Okay, so this is about identification of muscles of the upper limb. This lecture I have included so that you can revise your muscles of the upper limb, because this is how your online pre-university exams from Wednesday onwards, 26th August. There will be an theory exam, of course, initially. Then after that, your practical exams, and you will be asked online questions giving you an image of a muscle or a bone or a foramen or a histology slide or an X-ray or maybe some clinical condition, and you will be asked questions on that. So this is just a revision of the muscles of upper limb. So just listen carefully, because it's one way directed. You cannot communicate with me this time, so I'll be explaining it fast. Question number 1 is identify the muscle. This is the type of questions you will face in your practical exams, online exams. Identify the muscle. So first of all, you have to identify the structure and its orientation, right? So here you can see that this is an elbow joint, right? And seen from behind, because you're seeing is the olecranon process, right? And this is the medial epicondyle, and there you find is the radius, which is the head of the radius, ulna medial place. So this is actually which sided diagram? This is the right-sided elbow seen from behind. Okay, so you have this idea. Then after having this idea, the question being asked is about this muscle. Which is this muscle? So if you are having problem in understanding this muscle, why don't you think about this muscle? This muscle is attached to the tip of the olecranon, right? And coming from back of arm, so having a big tendon. So this muscle is the triceps, right? Triceps is attached to the tip of the olecranon process. And this muscle, can you see, is arising from the posterior surface of the lateral epicondyle of humerus. Okay, and it is having a downwards and medial course inserting on the upper portion of the ulna, you can see on the lateral surface of the olecranon. What is this muscle? So this muscle is Anconeus. If you tell this answer, you will get 50% marks. Then you have to write 2 points about this. So the 2 points you can include is like the nerve supply and the action. So the nerve supply of this muscle will be, of course, it's the radial nerve, but not direct branch, rather the nerve to the medial head of triceps. The nerve to the medial head of triceps will descend down to supply Anconeus as well. Okay? So it's from radial nerve. From the branch given out within the radial groove. Okay. Now the action of this muscle, because this is the tendon of triceps. So few of the fibers of triceps, they blend with Anconeus, right? So because of the fibers of triceps, they blend with Anconeus, it will also assist in extension of the elbow is one action. Other thing is that it will also stabilize the elbow. This is very important. You all should know there are stabilizers of each of the joint, because your body has this all freedom of movement in every directions, right? So and of course there are restrictions in the joint because of certain factors. Then you have to have some stabilizers, like a person, if he's doing circumduction at a shoulder joint, like in case of bowling in a cricket. So when you do circumduction while bowling, which muscle is the stabilizer of clavicle? Which muscle stabilizes clavicle in its position while circumduction? The answer is subclavius muscle. Then which muscle stabilizes scapula in its position while doing circumduction? Which muscle is a stabilizer of scapula? This answer is pectoralis minor. course, there are other muscles, rotator cuff and all of, they're all assisting, but stabilizers, single question, single point answers. Which is stabilizer of clavicle? Subclavius. Which muscle is stabilizer of scapula? The answer is pectoralis minor. Similarly, which muscle stabilizes elbow joint? The answer is Anconeus. And apart from that, the third action, it is a elbow joint. It is a hinge variety of synovial joint, and it will have a joint capsule. So when it has a joint capsule, you can imagine if you flex the elbow, there will be a shallowness here or a fossa here, and that is called olecranon fossa. So, and it has a joint capsule. Remember, so when you are, from a flex condition, if you are extending the elbow, that capsule has a chances of being impinged between olecranon and humerus. So this muscle also blends with the joint capsule, and it prevents impingement of the capsule between the olecranon and the humerus, while in case of sudden extension of elbow joint. Got it? Sudden हो या जैसे भी हो, extension of elbow में, it is preventing capsule from being pinched between olecranon and humerus. Okay, so those were the actions of Anconeus. Nerve supply is also been done. Now you need to identify this muscle. Are you all listening? Just raise your hands. Very good. Okay, done. So this identify the muscle. I can understand. इतने ज़्यादा raise hands कर रहे हैं. I know you want to quit, you want to leave, but I'll have to complete. So now just listen. Identify the muscle. There you find is, first of all, see the direct diagram. Here you find is radius, this is ulna, and for the carpals. First of all, you have to see that this, this is the right or the left-sided hand, one thing. Then it's a dorsal or the palmar surface. So orientation clear karna hai. One thing is radius you're seeing is on the lateral side, and here it's the ulna on the medial side, right? The other thing is the radius on the dorsal surface is roughened and grooved, unlike the anterior surface at the lower end of the radius, which is smooth and slightly concave. So this you're seeing is a corrugated and a roughened surface with a tubercle here, the dorsal tubercle of Lister, remember? And the styloid process is pointed here. This is ulnar styloid process. This is the radial styloid process. So you got to know that it is a dorsal view of the wrist, right, at the lower end of the forearm. So now the question is, which muscle is this? This muscle you see is actually quadrangular in shape, and it is binding the two bones, ulna to from the palmar surface of the ulna to the palmar surface of the palmar anterior surface of the radius, lower 1/4 or lower 1/3 of the radius. So that muscle is will be anterior interosseous nerve. And anterior interosseous nerve is a deep branch of median nerve. So you can write median nerve or you can write anterior interosseous nerve. Both will be marked correctly. Now action of this muscle will be, it will help, the name itself is saying pronator quadratus. So it helps in pronation of forearm, but it is more appreciable, the action is more appreciable in a which condition? In a extended elbow, because in a flexed elbow there comes the role of pronator teres, which has a humeral head as well. So pronator teres is a chief pronator in a flexed elbow, and pronator quadratus is the chief pronator in an extended elbow. So action is pronation of the forearm in an extended elbow, and don't forget this also is a stabilizer of inferior radioulnar joint. Okay, identify the muscle. This is a little question. Yeah, muscle you're seeing is this is the scapula, this is upper end of the humerus, the lower end of humerus, and everything. You know, this is the anterior surface. So this is the muscle of the front of arm, which has two bellies, two tendons of origin, two heads of origin. One head you can see is arising from the tip of the coracoid, and the other head arises from the supraglenoid tubercle. This head is intra-articular, passes through the joint capsule of the shoulder joint, and it's emerging here through the intertubercular sulcus, also called bicipital groove. So this muscle is biceps brachii, having two heads of origin, two bellies, bipinnates, and now look here, the tendon of biceps brachii. Remember, most of the students don't know, they don't want to know. They simply say it's inserted on the radius. Remember, every time, even I have asked this question several times, that you know, this biceps muscle actually bypasses humerus. It has no attachment to humerus. Right from scapula, it reaches to both the bones of the forearm. Remember, it is inserted both on radius and ulna. So the main longitudinal axis, you can say the main tendon of biceps that is inserted on the radial tuberosity, on which surface? Anterior surface or dorsal surface? That also is very important. So the tendon of biceps is attached to the posterior surface of radial tuberosity. Very important, because that helps in supination of forearm in a flexed elbow. Okay. The other thing is it has a flattened aponeurosis, which also forms the roof of the cubital fossa. And this flattened aponeurosis winds medially and merges with the deep fascia and is attached to the posterior upper border of the ulna. Got it? Forming the roof of the cubital fossa. And this aponeurosis will be pierced by a vein, and that is the deep vein perforating branch of median cubital vein. And that's why that vein is called selected for the IV line, because it does not slips. So ultimately, you got to know that this muscle is biceps brachii. Now, the nerve supply. Nerve supply of biceps brachii is musculocutaneous nerve. Everybody knows this. Now, the muscle, this nerve innervates the muscle on its anterior surface or on its posterior surface. That also is important. So remember that musculocutaneous nerve enters the arm by passing through the two heads, or you can say by perforating coracobrachialis. It enters into the arm and it runs in between biceps brachii anteriorly, and deep inside it is brachialis. So this nerve runs below to the biceps. So musculocutaneous innervates biceps on its posterior surface, and musculocutaneous innervates brachialis on its anterior surface. Finally, it emerges here laterally, and then it perforates the deep fascia and runs into the superficial fascia as the lateral cutaneous nerve of forearm. Okay. Then about actions of biceps brachii. Actions is very important. There are a lot of actions. The chief action, the prime action of biceps brachii is, remember, the chief action of biceps is supination of forearm in a flexed elbow. Right now, I told you the importance is that this tendon inserts on the posterior surface of the radial tuberosity. So the prime action of biceps is not flexion of elbow, because there is brachialis already for that. Brachialis is the prime flexor of the elbow. But biceps brachii is chief role in supination of forearm in a flexed elbow. One thing, of course, it will also help in flexion of elbow along with brachialis, and that's the second action. The third action is about its long head. That long head is, you know, it is intra-articular, right, coming from upper surface of the humerus. So it prevents upwards dislocation of humerus. That is another action. Or you can say it also is helping in stabilizing the shoulder joint, or it prevents upwards dislocation of the humerus. Action number 3 ho gaya. The action number 4 is that of the short head. Short head, you know, it arises with the tip of coracoid along with coracobrachialis. And both these muscles morphologically represents the adductor compartment of the thigh, because in the thigh there were 3 compartments and in the arm you have only 2 compartments. So to compare the homology, adductor compartment of the arm comprises of these 2 muscles, coracobrachialis and biceps brachii, short head. So yeah, that means this muscle will also help in adduction of arm, only this short head. Okay. So these are the few actions of biceps which I have told you. Okay. Identify the muscle. So before identifying, let's see the orientation. There you find is this scapula, the dorsal surface scapula, which has this lateral border, which is a thickened border. You find is this upper end of humerus. You have seen this the lesser tubercle. This is the head of humerus, right? And this will be the anatomical neck of the humerus. This will be the surgical neck of the humerus. Got it? And why is this posterior surface out of these different features which I've told you? Now look here. This is infraglenoid tubercle, right? So what arises from infraglenoid tubercle? You know, it is this long head of triceps, right? So if this is the long head of triceps, think about this head. This is actually, you can see this is the radial nerve, right, which is passing down here. Actually you can see 3 heads here. One head, second head, and the third head, right? And radial nerve is passing in between these 2 heads. So this is the lateral head of triceps. Down below is the medial head of triceps. In between the 2 heads, there's a radial groove, and through that radial groove, what all passes is radial nerve, brachial artery, as well as the 2 vena comitatus along with the brachial artery. Okay. So this muscle to be identified is the lateral head of triceps. Okay. So the nerve supply to this muscle will be by radial nerve, but the branch given to this, you know, muscle will be from within the radial groove, right? So let me tell you now the branches here in the radial nerve. When it reaches, emerges from the axilla, you know, running behind this axillary artery, then it descends down. You know, it's a branch from the posterior cord of brachial plexus. So this nerve, radial nerve, when it reaches here, before reaching into the radial groove, it gives 2 muscular branches. Remember, it gives a branch to the long head of triceps, and it gives a branch to the medial head of triceps. So course of the radial nerve, before entering the radial nerve, gives 2 muscular branches. And apart from that, it also gives 2 cutaneous branches, right? The cutaneous branches, upper lateral, lower lateral cutaneous nerve of arm. Lower lateral cutaneous nerve of arm will be given out from here, and the posterior cutaneous nerve of arm also will be given out from here. So 2 cutaneous branches, and one is this 2 muscular branches. Then it enters into the radial groove between the lateral and medial head of triceps, and in this groove it will again give 2 muscular branches. And what will be this? It will give a branch to the lateral head of triceps, and it will again innervate the medial head of triceps. And this branch to medial head of triceps given out in the radial groove, this will descend down to supply Anconeus as well. Abhi padhaya tha Anconeus, right? So it will innervate Anconeus as well. And it will also innervate a small slip of medial head of triceps, which blends with this capsule, or you can say the bursa, olecranon and bursa behind this, you know, this olecranon bursa. So, and to the capsule, this muscle is actually homologous to articularis genu in the front of thigh. And this muscle is called articularis cubitus. So articularis cubitus, remember articularis genu in the front of thigh was arising from the femur, lower end, lower portion, 1/3, and it was pulling the suprapatellar bursa while the extension of the knee joint. Similarly, articularis cubitus is a few fibers of this medial triceps which pull the little bursa while in extension of the elbow. So this medial nerve to medial head of triceps will innervate the medial head, the articularis cubitus and Anconeus. Okay, and the cutaneous branches will be the lateral cutaneous nerve of the forearm and lateral cutaneous arm. They will be given out here, and then this will descend down and will wind anteriorly and will give it will perforate the lateral intermuscular septum and will move into the front of the arm. There it will innervate. Remember, it will innervate brachioradialis. It will innervate the flexor carpi radialis. Sorry, it will innervate the extensor carpi radialis longus. That will be the last muscle innervated by the main trunk. And in its course, it will also give, remember, don't forget, it also gives a proprioceptive branch to brachialis also into the front of arm. So that was about course of the radial nerve in the arm. And that's the lateral head of triceps, which covers the radial groove. Action, of course, is extension at the elbow. Powerful extension at the elbow. Identify the muscle. This muscle in the diagram, first of all, this hand you can presume is of the right side palmar view. Right side palmar view. So this is the medial side, this is the lateral side. As you see, is the thumb here with 2 phalanges. Rest all of them will be having 3 phalanges. Okay, so this is the first metacarpal, and you can see that the first metacarpal does not form an intermetacarpal joint. Intermetacarpal joint is between the base of second, third, and fourth second, third, fourth, and fifth metatarsals. So first metatarsal is completely free from the second metatarsal. One important factor of being a Homo sapiens sapiens, that you get this freedom of thumb, unlike the apes, chimpanzees, and gorillas. So this is important thing, unlike the other animals, that you have this freedom of thumb, because one important is this: you don't have an intermetacarpal joint. Then this is the all of these muscles you can see, they are bipinnate, and they are arising from the adjacent surface of the shaft of the metacarpals, right? So these muscles, these are bipinnate, and all of them, they are reaching there, you can see. Ultimately, they are reaching, let's say this is the median plane, in the palm, the median plane passes through the third metacarpal or the middle phalanx, middle digit. So you can see that the first, by then now you should have identified, because if all of them are bipinnate, obviously the answer is dorsal interossei, right? Because palmar interossei, all of them are unipinnate. Lumbricals, they arise from the tendon of flexor digitorum flexor digitorum profundus, and in case of lumbricals, they don't have a bony origin, first of all, and they are the medial two are bipinnate, the lateral 2 are unipinnate. And so here they are a dorsal interossei, and you can see this is inserted on the index finger, base of the proximal phalanx, and this is in second is attached to the base of the third digit proximal phalanx. Fourth is also attached to the third digit, and the fifth one, third one is attached to the base of the proximal phalanx, the third digit, and this is the fourth dorsal interossei attached to the base of the proximal phalanx of the ring finger. So the action of this muscle is abduction of digits from the median plane. So abduction, you need not abductors for this, because you have specialized abductor, pollicis longus, abductor pollicis brevis for this. You don't need abductor for the digit little finger because you have abductor digiti minimi for this. So that means you are having 4 dorsal interossei for the abduction of 3 digits. So first, and that is away from the median plane. So the first dorsal interossei will, abduct the index finger away from the median plane. Second dorsal interossei will abduct the middle finger towards the radial side. Third dorsal interossei will abduct the middle finger towards the ulnar side, while the fourth dorsal interossei will abduct the ring finger towards the ulnar side. Got it? So the action is abduction. But this is not the alone action. Remember that the 12 muscles from the palm, they reach to the dorsal side between the phalanges, between the digits. And these 12 muscles are 4 lumbricals, 4 palmar interossei, 4 dorsal interossei. So they do not insert on the palmar surface, rather they, passing between the interdigital clefts. They reach on the dorsal side of the digits and they blend with the extensor digitorum. That's how these are inserted. The 12 intrinsic muscles of the palm, they merge with the tendon of dorsal digitorum on the dorsal side, extensor digitorum, and they form this this dorsal digitorum extensor sheath or the extensor hood on the dorsal side of the digits, right? So with the combined action of these 12 muscles on the palmar side and the extensor digitorum on the extensor side, and don't forget the 2 extensors which blend with the extensor digitorum. One is extensor indicis, which blend with the extensor digitorum of the index finger, and extensor digiti minimi also, which blends with the extensor digitorum of the little finger. So in short, 12 muscles on the palmar side, 3 muscles on the extensor side. Together, when contracted, they bring about this action of, remember, the Babaji ka Tullu type of action. That means there is flexion of MP joints and extension of IP joints. Among the digits, not talking about the thumb, right? So the 4 digits, out of these 4 digits, there will be flexion at MP and extension at IP joints. That is the action brought about these 13 muscles. So don't forget that dorsal interossei is also helping to maintain this action of, isko keh sakte cobra-like position of the hand. Yeah, you can say that Babaji ka Tullu type of action. Whatever you, because I am looking limited, I don't have a board here. You're not in front of me. I have to, give such examples. So that is the action of dorsal interossei, but the prime action is abduction of digits. And this is the first dorsal interossei with the 2, bipinnate, muscle, leaving a gap here. Now, who will tell me what is the structure that passes to the gap here in the first dorsal interossei? And this is very important, and it is the radial artery which enters the palmar surface through this gap. Radial artery, remember, which was passing into the anatomical stuff box on the dorsal side. So after giving the dorsal arterial arch and the dorsal branches, then the radial artery enters the palm through this space between the first dorsal interossei. And when it enters here, it gives its 2 branches, this princeps pollicis and the radialis indicis on the radial side of index. So these 2 branches are given from the radial artery here. But this course of radial artery will not be visible because it will be covered by another important muscle, and that muscle is adductor pollicis. So that means you can say that the radial artery within the palmar surface is a content of adductor space of palm, right? And radial artery, after giving these 2 branches, remember that this adductor pollicis is having 2 heads. It has a transverse head and an oblique head. So the radial artery enters into the palm in the form of the palmar arch. and this deep palmar arch emerges between the two heads of adductor pollicis, right? And deep palmar arch, it is the deepest content. It's like, the name itself is telling. Deep palmar arch is the deepest content of the palm, and it rests over here on the base of the shaft of the metacarpals. And superficial palmar arch, which is like a continuation of ulnar artery, that is an extension of ulnar artery, and it is the superficial most content. Mind it, let superficial arterial arch is the superficial most content of the palm. It even runs superficial to the digital nerves, and superficial palmar arch runs along the shaft of the metacarpals towards the head. So both of them, both the arches, they are running in relation to metacarpals. Okay, deep here at the base of the metacarpals, and the superficial palmar arch here below to the head. Okay, so that was about dorsal interossei. Now identify this muscle. I just told you about this muscle. And to first of all, the direction, the orientation of the diagram you can see is, this is the thumb with the two phalanges, right? So this is the lateral side, this is the medial side, right? So this is the palmar surface, and you can see the concavity of the metacarpals is on the palmar surface. So this is the palmar surface of the right hand. One thing is clear. And with the position of the thumb, you can also tell very easily the name of this muscle, which has two heads, right? I just told you there's this head arising from the palmar surface of the third metacarpal, and the other head, it arises actually from the flexor retinaculum, also blending from these carpals and base of third metacarpal. And here the largest carpal bone, who will tell me the largest carpal bone is capitate. So it arises from there also. So these are the two heads. This is a transverse head and this is an oblique head, and the muscle is adductor pollicis. You can see that it is inserting here onto the base of the proximal phalanx of the thumb, right? So the action here, adductor pollicis, and it has few fibers reaching to the head of the proximal phalanx. First metacarpal. So remember that this is adductor pollicis, and nerve supply, remember, it is the last muscle, or you can say that the ulnar nerve, after completing its entire course, it buries itself here in this substance of adductor pollicis. The last muscle innervated by this ulnar nerve is this muscle. Similarly, homologous to ulnar nerve in the sole, it is lateral plantar nerve. So what will be the last muscle innervated by lateral plantar nerve? The answer is adductor hallucis. Okay, and between the two heads, what emerges out is, just now I told you, it is the deep arterial arch. Okay, so action of course is adduction of the thumb, and adduction of the thumb will be in 90 degrees plane to the rest of the digits. Okay. By the way, what is the test? What is the test for this muscle? A name test. Remember, adductor pollicis के लिए कौन से test थे? एक तो book test था, right? Book test. You clamp the book with your hand with the help of your thumb. So that is a test for adductor pollicis. Book test. Another test is Foreman's test. Remember, Foreman's is done with the help of two persons, pulling the book on their side, and if its adductor pollicis paralyzed, the book slips out, and the person tries to catch hold of that book with the help of its flexor pollicis brevis, right? So he flexes his thumb. So that is a check for this muscle, and the test is called Foreman's test. Okay, so these two tests, book test and Foreman's test, both of them are for this adductor pollicis. Identify this muscle. Look here, don't worry, there is only 10 muscles to be identified, so you've left with only 3 more. So this diagram, can you find the orientation? When you seeing is olecranon fossa stuffed with a bone, that means it's a posterior view, and this is olecranon process of ulna. There you find is the head of radius, so it is the lateral bone. So So that means this diagram you're seeing is the posterior view of the forearm and hand, the posterior view. And also because you can see that the lower end of the radius is not smooth, it is grooved and having tubercular surfaces. This is the dorsal tubercle of Lister. And the styloid process of ulna also dipping down posterior-medially. Okay. Which styloid process is dipping more distal? You can see in the diagram that the radial styloid process is 1 centimeter distal to the ulnar styloid process, and that's why your hand is in slightly ulnar flexed hand, like slightly adducted hand is the normal anatomical position of the hand, because the ulnar styloid process is 1 centimeter proximal. Anyway, so we're talking about this muscle in green color. You see is the posterior border of the ulna, right? You focus upon this muscle. I think who will be able to tell me this muscle? This is the posterior border of ulna. It arises from the ulna, posterior surface. One thing, right? Posterolateral surface of ulna. And this, although not very clear in this diagram, but I am telling you that this muscle is also taking origin from the posteromedial surface of radius, and it also takes origin from the posterior surface of the interosseous membrane. Got it? Then you can see this muscle moves down and becoming a content or a boundary of anatomical snuff box. This tendon is inserted onto the base of the first metacarpal. Which muscle is this? So if I have given you hint, or rather presume yourself how to identify, one thing is it is arising from both the muscles on the back of forearm. Then you can see it is not crossing the carpals. It is not crossing the carpals. It is not crossing the dorsal tubercle of Lister. In case it would have crossed the dorsal tubercle of Lister and then reached to the base of the metacarpal, then the answer would be extensor pollicis longus. Clear? Remember, extensor pollicis longus winds through this dorsal tubercle of Lister, crosses the carpals, and then reaches to the base of the metacarpal. Rather, it reaches to the head of the metacarpal. Don't forget, you can palpate by extending your thumb. You can palpate for the tendon of extensor pollicis longus. It's a very prominent tendon. It passes through the third compartment of extensor retinaculum, right? Forming the posterior boundary of anatomical snuff box. So it does not reaches to the base of the metacarpal, rather it reaches to the head of the first metacarpal. And here it's not in this diagram. Okay, so what remains is other two tendons. Other two tendons में क्या है? Abductor pollicis longus and extensor pollicis brevis, and both these two tendons, they were forming the anterior boundary of anatomical snuff box, right? So anterior boundary में there will be two tendons. We have already done with this extensor pollicis longus, which is not there in the diagram, right? So out of these two muscles, extensor pollicis brevis or abductor pollicis longus, which of the two will be this? So extensor pollicis brevis के बारे में क्या है? एक बड़ा important fact बताया था to help you remember the two extensors of the thumb, extensor pollicis longus, extensor pollicis brevis, they arise from only one bone of the back of forearm, right? So ये भी बताया था मैंने, which bone is nearer to the thumb, radius or ulna? So you know that this radius is more in approximation with the thumb. So closer to the thumb, that means extensor pollicis brevis will take origin on the posterior surface of radius. Which bone is away from the thumb? That is ulna in the forearm. So extensor pollicis longus will take origin only from the ulna, posterior surface, while abductor pollicis longus takes origin from both the bones of the back of forearm, both radius and ulna, along with the posterior surface of the interosseous membrane. Clear है? अब समझ में आ गई बात? तो extensor pollicis brevis अगर होता in case, so it would have been arising only from the radius. It's arising from both the bones, right? So it's clear now that the answer is abductor pollicis longus, and it forms the anterior boundary of the anatomical snuff box along with extensor pollicis brevis. And through which compartment does it passes out to the extensor retinaculum? Through the first compartment. Okay, this is understood. Just identify the muscle here. You can see is the posterior surface of the scapula, this is spine of scapula, this is supraspinous fossa, this is infraspinous fossa, this is the acromion, this is the clavicle, this is the head of radius, this is the shaft of radius, this is the greater tubercle, there is this anatomical snuff box, this is the surgical neck of the humerus, this is the lesser, infraclavicular tubercle, this is the lateral border, this is the medial border, this is the inferior angle. Now ultimately you've got the orientation. So this is the right shoulder posterior view, right? So think about this muscle. This muscle you're seeing is arising from the dorsal surface, lower portion, or you can say lower 1/3 of the lateral border of the dorsal surface of the scapula along to the inferior angle, and this muscle is ascending upwards and laterally, reaching to the anterior surface of the humerus, upper surface, anteriorly upper surface of the humerus, and is inserting here onto the medial lip of the intertubercular sulcus anteriorly. So this muscle will be, this will be teres major, right? Minor is above major. Remember, minor, teres minor would have been arising here, and teres minor would insert here, SIT, on the middle impression on the greater tubercle, right? And teres minor, and between teres minor and teres major, there was an artery entering on the dorsal surface of the scapula, and that was circumflex branch of subscapular artery. Okay, so that, I mean, that actually reaches by piercing teres minor here. Okay, so that was subscapular circumflex branch. Now teres minor, in there's a special nerve that's a branch from axillary nerve reaching to teres minor, and that branch to teres minor was having a pseudoganglion branch from axillary nerve. So we're not doing with axillary, teres minor, which is lateral rotator of the shoulder joint. We are talking about this teres major. Now, teres major, important points here. One thing is posterior boundary of posterior. So among talking about posterior boundary of the axilla, remember the upper 2/3 of the posterior wall of the axilla is formed by subscapularis. Then lower 1/3 is formed by teres major, along with the twisted tendon of latissimus dorsi. So these are the three muscles, they form the posterior wall of the axilla. So teres major is partly forming the posterior wall of the axilla, then it reaches here and inserts here, and to the lateral medial lip of the intertubercular sulcus or bicipital groove. Remember, a lady between two major, latissimus dorsi inserts into the floor, and pectoralis major from the front of the chest inserts onto the lateral lip of the intertubercular sulcus. Now about the nerve supply. Teres major nerve supply. Remember, anteriorly in the concave surface of the scapula, that is called costal surface, there's this subscapular fossa or multipinnate muscle arises from there, and that is subscapularis, and that has a major supply. It has two supplies, both of them supply, upper and lower subscapular nerves. Remember, upper and lower subscapular nerves, they will innervate the subscapularis, and the lower subscapular nerve also supplies teres major. Okay, it might have, some authors have written that it might have also been innervated by long thoracic nerve. Not from long thoracic. It's from thoracodorsal nerve, the nerve through latissimus dorsi, because that also is winding here below to this to reach to the medial impression on the intertubercular sulcus. So mainly the nerve supply of teres major is lower subscapular nerve, and sometimes it might also be innervated by thoracodorsal nerve or nerve to latissimus dorsi. But main answer is lower subscapular nerve. Action of teres major. Action of teres major will be, दिख रहा है अपने आप से, it will cause adduction. Simple सी बात है, it will cause adduction of the arm as well as it might help in medial rotation of the arm, because it's coming from the dorsal side and reaching to the anterior side, right? So twisting the lateral wall of the chest wall and forming the posterior wall of the axilla. So main action is adduction and slight medial rotation of the shoulder. Got it? That was teres major. The next is identify the muscle here. Now look here, there you don't find any olecranon process. Instead, you're finding is a capitulum and a trochleum. That means it's the front of lower end of humerus. So this is the radius with a radial tuberosity. That means it's clear now that is the anterior view of the elbow joint, right? So there you find is the thumb on the lateral side. So this is the right forearm anterior view. Now think about this green color muscle that is in question. So this green color muscle, you can see it is arising from the anterior surface of the medial epicondyle of humerus, and that point is called the common flexor origin. So this muscle you can see is arising from that common flexor origin or the medial anterior surface of the medial epicondyle of humerus, and is having an oblique course in the front of the forearm. And of course, rather a superficial course, because there are a lot of muscles deep inside, you can see. So it is superficially running obliquely course in the forearm. It crosses the muscles down there, and it can see it crosses the carpals, and it splits and inserts onto the base of the palmar surface of second and third metacarpal. So you have to tell about this muscle, right? To assist you in identifying, you can think of the other muscle that also is arising from the same point, right? And this muscle is splitting into 4 tendons, and all of these tendons, you can see they are reaching to, these tendons are reaching to the 4 digits, and they're splitting at the proximal phalanx to insert on either side of the base of the middle phalanx. So this muscle is flexor digitorum superficialis. Deeper to that, you can find this muscle deep inside. This is digitorum. You can see flexor digitorum. This also is passing below the flexor retinaculum, and it's splitting into 4 tendons, and all of these tendons will pass between the two splitted ends of flexor digitorum superficialis, and will insert to the palmar surface of the terminal phalanx, of the base of the terminal phalanx, that is flexor digitorum profundus. And down below, you can see another muscle. This is a quadrangular muscle, that is Pronator quadratus, right? So between the, what's is like forearm space of Perona, very commonly asked, between these long tendons. And by the way, there's another muscle here from the radius here. You can see here. This muscle here, it is also passing through the retinaculum, below the retinaculum, and this separately reaches into the thumb, and it inserted onto the base of the terminal phalanx of the thumb. So this is flexor pollicis longus, right? This one. By the time, I believe you must have understood now about this muscle. So this muscle is flexor carpi radialis. This muscle is flexor carpi radialis. You got to know the origin, right? Common flexor origin, anterior surface of medial epicondyle of humerus. Then this muscle is running below the flexor retinaculum, but remember, in the flexor retinaculum, it is covered by a separate synovial sheath, and that's called radial bursa. No. That's, sorry, don't get confused. This muscle, actually, let me tell you, this flexor retinaculum here, there are 9 tendons. 4 for digitorum profundus, 4 for flexor digitorum superficialis, and 1 for pollicis longus. The 9 tendons along with the median nerve. Of course, there's a recurrent branch from the deep palmar arch going back here. So these are the tendons passing below the retinaculum. I have told you about that this tendon will pass superficial. Of course, it's a separate compartment. Flexor carpi radialis actually is separated out. It passes no doubt below the deep to the retinaculum, but it is separated out from the flexor carpal tunnel by a deeper slip of the flexor retinaculum on the radial side. And because of that, there's a separate compartment for flexor carpi radialis. Remember, this tendon when it reaches the palmar surface, it grooves this bone called trapezium. Trapezium articulates with the proximal surface of which bone? First metacarpal, to form a saddle joint, right? So in its course, it grooves the palmar surface of trapezium and runs below the retinaculum, but separated out from this, carpal tunnel by a deeper slit of retinaculum, and will insert onto the base of the second and third metacarpal. Flexor carpi radialis. What muscle antagonizes its action? On the dorsal side, on the back of forearm, there are two muscles opposing this action, and the two muscles are extensor carpi radialis longus, extensor carpi radialis brevis. So on the dorsal surface, you have two muscles antagonizing its action. Here it's alone combating the action. Okay, so this muscle you've got to know is flexor carpi radialis, and the nerve supply for this muscle will be, who will tell me? Of course, it is median nerve of forearm. Action, of course, will be, there are two actions. One is like flexion at the wrist joint and abduction of the wrist joint, right? Abduction of the wrist joint and flexion of the wrist joint. These are two actions. Okay, that is done. And last slide again. So identify the muscle. Which muscle is this? You're seeing is the dorsal cervical spine of scapula. This is infraspinous fossa. This is supraspinous fossa, and this is the humerus, right? So this you can see is a bony arch. This is a horseshoe-shaped bony arch. There's a lateral one that clavicle, acromion, and spine. Or this bony horseshoe-shaped bony arch. There's a muscle coming from the median plane on the back and inserting onto this muscle, onto this bony arc, and the muscle is called trapezius, right? From the lateral clavicle, acromion, and this spine. And from the same bony arc, there is a muscle that arises, that takes origin, lateral one clavicle, acromion lateral border, and the lower lip of the spine of scapula. The muscle is called deltoid, and this deltoid together inserts onto a V-shaped tuberosity called deltoid tuberosity on the mid shaft of humerus laterally. And don't forget that this is deltoid tuberosity. If it's asked what is deltoid tubercle, then the answer will be this. Deltoid tubercle is the point on the spine of scapula, on the lower lip, onto which the posterior most fibers of deltoid arise. So this is deltoid tubercle, and this is deltoid tuberosity, right? And apart, so which muscle is this? Supraspinatus, you know this. It is a initiator of abduction. It initiates the initial 15 degrees of abduction. And by the way, we are talking about deltoid here now, the muscle in question. Deltoid is a multipinnate muscle, but not completely. If you go precisely, it's only the acromial fibers. The lateral fibers are multipinnate. The anterior or clavicular fibers are not multipinnate. The posterior fibers arising from the spine, they are not multipinnate. Only the lateral fibers are multipinnate. Okay, that's done. Now, nerve supply, is axillary nerve, right? And action of deltoid. So let me tell you that action, you need not worry so much, because action is like all the actions possible. Simple answer. All the actions possible are being done by deltoid. And what are these actions? Let's think about flexion. Flexion will be an action performed by, flexion of shoulder joint will be performed by clavicular fibers of deltoid, or the anterior fibers of deltoid. Extension of shoulder joint will be done by the posterior or the fibers arising from the spine of scapula. The posterior fibers of the deltoid will help in extension at the shoulder joint, right? So flexion, extension ho gaya. Then about adduction and abduction. Abduction, is the chief action of deltoid, right? Because the lateral fibers are multipinnate. So being multipinnate in muscle, it is having less of span of movement movement, but it is a powerful action. It's the strength of muscle is more. So it helps in abduction of shoulder joint from 15 to 90 degrees, right? And beyond 90 degrees, it's with the help of trapezius and serratus anterior. That's called overhead abduction. So this 15 to 90 degrees abduction. Now what about adduction? Adduction के लिए क्या करेंगे? Simple सी बात है. If you know anterior and posterior fibers of deltoid, that means clavicular fibers and posterior fibers of deltoid, they act together. They will cause adduction of the arm, and you can check for this. Like have you seen posters in the gym जहाँ पे Arnold Schwarzenegger है वो अपने pectoralis का bulge दिखलाते हैं. Why? How to check pectoralis? You ask to clench your fist and push against each other in front of your chest. So in doing that position, your pectorals bulges out actually. So what you are trying is you are trying to adduct. Of course, pectoralis measures the powerful adductor of the shoulder joint. Then at the same time, if you feel for the contraction of deltoid, you will find it also is contracted. So in adduction, when both anterior and posterior fibers of the deltoid are contracting, that also helps in adduction. What remains now is a medial and lateral rotation. Yes, so the anterior or the clavicular fibers, they will help in medial rotation of the shoulder. Posterior fibers from the spine of scapula, they will help in lateral rotation of the scapula, right? So it has done all 6 actions: flexion, extension, adduction, abduction, medial rotation, lateral rotation. And if you combine them, like the action formed is called circumduction. That also is being done by deltoid. Circumduction में क्या होता है? Initially, like you're bowling in a cricket. So initially you go for extension, then abduction, then flexion, and then adduction. So that arc formed is circumduction. So it is doing all those actions. Got it? So that was about deltoid, and it is a muscle most commonly used for intramuscular injections. But remember, intramuscular injections are given in lower part of the deltoid. Why not in the upper part? Because in the upper part along the surgical neck, there is a chances for damaging the axillary nerve and circumflex humeral vessels. So better to give in the lower half of the deltoid intramuscular injections. Okay, time up.